You want to turn on the recording. So thank you all for joining us today for the Global Viewpoints Forum. It's been a real pleasure to work on these the last few months and really bring people together from all over the world and have conversations that are important in our times. And it's really and to see familiar faces and new friends join us as well. A couple of housekeeping, just make sure you're on mute. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat, or there'll be some time for some discussion built into Ahlem's presentation. And just make sure you have yourself on mute so there's no outside noise. I want to start by introducing Ms. Ahlem Nasraoui. She's an accomplished leader and influencer in inclusive engagement of youth at risk and marginalized groups, working towards fostering connections among community service organizations and nonprofit organizations and non-governmental organizations in the public and private sector in the Middle East, North Africa region. She has over 7 years of work experience, including leadership management within Tunisian civil society, where she founded Young Leaders Entrepreneurs, a nonprofit focusing on youth entrepreneurship, hackathons, and boot camps to support the Tunisian democratic transition. She brings experience in project management, planning, budget, and executing logistics and campaigning resources. Currently, she is working with the U.S. Department of State's Middle East Partnership Initiative, MEPI, and has collaborated with the U.S. Embassy in Tunisia. She has extensive experience in implementing youth and inclusion-focused projects, including the Peacelab project and Peaceathon, which incorporated mobility, digital media, and fine arts in countering extremist narratives. She is an advancing social enterprise and entrepreneurial spirit as a strategy for addressing gender inequality and building resilience against violent extremism in Tunisia. As a member of the Women's Alliance for Security Leadership, she was chosen as one of the U.S. Department of State's top 10 youth leaders in 2016 as part of the Emerging Young Leaders Award. And she has been invited to act as a contributor to high-profile events focusing on inclusion and peace building, including seminars hosted by the World Bank, Fragility Forum, European Peace Liaison Office, Search for Common Ground, and the Hidayah Institute. In 2016, she was awarded the UN OAC and BMW Group Intercultural Innovation Award for her initiative Unleash Tunisia Venture Bus. And in 2019, she was selected among the top 100 most influential youth leaders in Africa. She's an Arabic native speaker and speaks both French and English fluently. We're very excited and happy to have her here today. I want to turn things over to Legacy President and Founder J.E. Rash to open up with a couple of comments, and then we'll get into hearing about all these great things that Ahlem has done, and really the topic of how we can counter violent extremism by investing in youth as partners. Mr. Rash?
Thank you very much, Jason. Thank you, Ahlem, for being with us today. Good day to all of you. Indeed, I hope and I pray it is and has been a day of goodness for you and from you to others. We all recognize, I am sure, that humanity is at a critical crossroads when disruption and confusion and forces of light and hope meet forces of darkness and destruction, and we wonder where the road to peace and justice lies. But of course, segments of humanity throughout history have experienced plagues and pandemics and internal and external decay, yet today's globalized world, epitomized by instant communication, combined with greed and hierarchical, exclusionary monetary and capital models, have given birth to another violence and challenges the core values that are at the foundation of human purpose, the capacity to be humane, to care for one another, to be careful in the pursuit of personal success and equity, equality, justice, and peace. And it's times like this when, as Shakespeare said, we face the challenge of Hamlet, whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them. Unfortunately, using this as a metaphor for our times, it too illustrates the struggle between life and death, not the personal choice that Hamlet was pondering, but certainly how are we to address nobly and with dignity with the vicissitudes and the circumstances of the day-to-day life, what we face. What is avoidable, what can be transformed, what do we have the ability to control? Certainly our response to circumstance is a unique power and attribute of the human being to seek understanding, to craft laws and policies and develop unified communities to promote and to sustain what is good. We can address climate change. We can affirm and stand for the rights of minorities, for women's equality, for peaceful solutions to prevent conflict, to end food insecurity and poverty and inequities. And many, certainly most people, I believe, affirm such goals, yet for reasons that are too complex to discuss here today, but which are necessary to pursue. It seems that the negative destructive forces, albeit in the minority, have a tremendous effect to disrupt. So then where do we look to transform society, to develop a mindset, to build a future of cooperation and peace and collaboration and love? We look to people like Ahlem Nasraoui. She, like so many of the young leaders we at Legacy International have had the honor to work with over 4 decades, has chosen to carry the heavy burden of transforming society from within and without. A young visionary with the insight and the daring to meet these challenges. What I have discovered in this many decades-long journey of mine is that educating our youth to their potential, exposing them to others who look, speak, think, feel differently, but who share common values is the path out of this morass and confusion of modern society. The principle of diversity and unity is more than a slogan like here in the United States, E pluribus unum, from the many, the one. It is the road to unifying people for the good, and it is in my limited understanding, the only hope for future generations. Dr. Martin Luther King, speaking of Mahatma Gandhi, spoke of a transcendental plan and force when he said, Gandhi was inevitable. If humanity is to progress, Gandhi is inescapable. He lived, thought, and acted inspired by the vision of humanity evolving toward a world of peace and harmony. We may ignore him at our own risk, he said. And so, in the pursuit of creating a new tomorrow today, the overarching rubric of these global viewpoints forums, we need to listen to such leaders while looking forward at people like Ahlem, creating a legacy of justice and peace, affirming that tomorrow, based on the goodness we do today and the inspiration we affect others with, and the trust that we can and shall overcome, that we will in that way overcome the adversity that surrounds us. Thank you, Ahlem, for bringing back to us your vision and your inspiration. Coming back to legacy one more time. We stand ready to serve, to cooperate, to collaborate, to support you and the work of others like you who have had the opportunity and the honor to work with in the past and hopefully in the bright future. Over to you, Ahlem.
Thank you so much, Mr. Raj, for those very enlightening and motivating words. Indeed, I think that, investing in youth will help us create the future that we want. And of course, this doesn't mean that we don't learn from the previous generation, but I think it's a sort of legacy that we need to celebrate and enjoy as well, and learn also from the past. And I want to start to thank everyone for attending this session to talk about especially the Tunisia case and also my experience, my humble one, as I'm not a specialist in security or peace building, but we are trying to do with what we are learning on daily basis. And also I want to thank Legacy, Jason, and everyone for giving me this opportunity to share as I said, my humble experience and also to learn from you as well. So I will start with sharing my presentation. So hope everyone can see it, like the PowerPoint.
Yes, we can
looks
see
good.
it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let me. So, I mean, thank you so much, Jason, for the introduction about my professional life as Ahlem. So Ahlem, for those who are not, I mean, familiar with the Arabic language, it means dreams. And whenever I present myself, I always, go back, to my name, because I feel that what I'm doing or what I'm hoping to do was always driven by that dream, by that passion to make a change. So other than maybe I would say like the fancy words about, awards or anything, I'm always proud to identify myself as someone who came from a vulnerable community myself, El Kasserine, which is in the southwest of Tunisia and bordering Algeria. And this community really suffered from unequal, share of resources and lack of development or even access to educational venues. And living that childhood where I saw that young people in my community didn't have the same equal opportunities as those in bigger cities, I felt that unfair system somehow and unfair policies have dragged many, a lot of youth. I'm not trying to justify, the deeds, but it wasn't like a choice, but other than indulge in either like joining violent extremist groups or crimes or delinquency or even, seeking a better future in Europe. As you know, Tunisia is the north of Africa, very close to Europe. And a lot of young people were dreaming about improving their life standards by embarking in clandestine immigration. And for me, I think that even though, I mean, despite all of these, conditions, I had that privilege. That privilege was that my family believed in education and they supported that despite, all the odds. Unlike many other women, I would say in a younger age, they were pushed to early marriage, or young people, they were pushed to the streets where all the bad things happen. So currently I'm 29 years old and my life changed with an exchange program back in 2013 when I've heard from one of my teachers about an exchange program, which is the SUSI, Women's Leadership in Notre Dame University, sponsored through the State Department. And when I started that journey, I've learned a lot about innovation, about social entrepreneurship, about peace building and all of that stuff. And that's how, when I went back to Tunisia, I started with friends of mine, the Young Leaders Entrepreneurs Association, with the hope that we will be solving the issue of the skyrocketing rates of unemployment in Tunisia, as the state cannot really hire everyone. And we had a higher education rate, which is good, but at the same time, there was a gap between the education, what you learn in school, and the market needs and reality. So you would, as an example, have someone with a PhD in Tunisia, but they lack, not all of them, but the majority, like the soft skills, how to market, their CVs and how to do job hunting techniques. We started that, but things changed, and with the conditions and the terrorist attacks that happened in Tunisia, the political instability, as we were a startup democracy, and I like to use this kind of wording, as we were hoping to build our democracy. So for those who are not familiar, we had what we call the Arab Spring, or some others they call the Jasmine Revolution in Tunisia, which started 2011, as they ousted the ex-regime because of corruption and lack of social justice, in order to, build a new democracy where young people and all citizens can enjoy, freedom of expression, getting jobs, and a respectful way of life. So this is just a brief about myself and about maybe the motivation and how that journey started with the civil society and my passion somehow to advance human rights, women's rights, and mainly building peace through countering violent extremism. So, speaking about Tunisia, so Tunisia is, in North Africa, as I said, it's between Algeria and Libya and close to Italy, south of Europe. And you can see Tunisia has somehow, like as they called in our educational manuals, a strategic location. And it plays a major role between, you know, Africa and also Europe. But at the same point, it was exposed to many security threats with the instability in Libya, and also in Algeria. It was somehow, I would say, like the quietness before the storm and all of that. And it was also close to Europe. So we had like a culture which is not really, as a lot of people, they would stereotype the Muslim, you know, Arab culture. It was like a mixture of both, like Westerners, Western culture, European, open-minded, but at the same time, they tend to look for their own religious identity, like as Arab and as Muslims. And when I tried yesterday to Google, I mean, Tunisia, like I saw a lot of fancy things with, you know, that Tunisia is really known as, a country that its economy is really driven by tourism, as they have like nice beaches and it's a sunny, as you know, most of the Mediterranean countries, like it's the old Carthage. It had a lot of, empires going there and leaving, from the Ottoman to Turkish to, the Roman, Byzantine, and so many cultures. And Tunisia somehow is predominantly Muslim Sunni, 90%, with minorities of Jewish and Jewish communities, and also some others like Christians, newly converted, or even religious, communities in Tunisia. But the structure of the, I would say, like the age of the inhabitants there, mostly, young people, they are desperate, to build their own future. And I would say that there is also a gap between social classes, which is now even clearer after the revolution 2011. And I don't know, like I would add, to the play that Tunisia, before, it was a surprise for everyone when the revolution happened, because Tunisia was a very censored country. Even YouTube back in before 2011 was banned, and people would use like proxy or other tools in order to search for other things. And there was not much of freedom of expression. It was a one-stage, autocrat, like, managed state. It was manipulated or used by one family, the ousted regime. So everything was for others, that Tunisia is a happy country, Mediterranean. There is no issue, and everyone is enjoying, their life under the sun. Other thing is that Tunisia, as compared to other Arab countries, there is no polygamy here, for example, and it enjoys, like plenty of rights when it comes to gender equality. So this is just,
Have the one sentence.
Sorry?
I think it was just somebody was off mute slightly.
Yeah, sure.
Continue. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you so much. So just, I wanted to give you a brief, maybe introduction about Tunisia, where it's located, and the structure or the segmentation of its, citizens and all of that. So, as I told you about this nice story of Tunisians enjoying life, most of them, they weren't aware that they are being oppressed, no jobs, no social justice, no freedom of expression, nothing at all. Even in the media, whenever you Google Tunisia before 2011, you will only, when you Google it, you only see beautiful pictures of people enjoying their lives on the beach, and that's it. But after 2011, one street vendor, ignited all of the waves of what we call the Arab Spring, not only in Tunisia, but also in other countries like Libya and Egypt, and the list goes on. It started all of that, like we didn't even have a civil society before. So after 2011, the regime was ousted, a new government on place. We had referendum, we had, elections and all of that. Civil society organizations, they popped up from everywhere in Tunisia. A lot of international organizations, they moved inside Tunisia with a lot of money. So everyone was looking where to start from. And then the surprise, we had a lot of terrorist attacks happening starting from 2011. And I can mention one of the deadly attacks in the Bardo Museum, which is one of the most famous museums in Tunisia, and also even in the region, where I think like dozens of people lost their lives when someone like a Tunisian radical, he started shooting everyone. The same happened in Sousse, it's a coastal city, like an attack happened and more than, I think, 30 British citizens lost of their lives when someone randomly started shooting in the beach. So we started to hear a lot about notions like counting violent extremism, preventing violent extremism, and assessing the security in Tunisia, like security system from a hard point, like when it comes to borders patrolling, to a softer approach, which is more about civil society and communication and dialogue. And I would say that there was less research to understand the variability factors. And by this, I want to invite you, as I want to hear from you, like, what do you think about what can be the reasons behind the rise of violent extremism and youth radicalization? For example, as you may heard about a country like Tunisia, which is now considered as the only democracy in the Middle East. I will send you the link.
I have it. I'll put it in the chat here.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah. So if everyone could click on that link, if you're able to join, and then Ahlem, just in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a plus sign, and you can add like a sticky note to this board. So, reason behind the rise of violent extremism and youth radicalization. Also, some people could add into the chat there as well. So there's a few coming in. Ahlem?
Yes.
Okay, it looks like things have slowed down on the paddle. Padlet, do you want to share?
Yeah, let me open. Thank you so much. I was struggling with how to stop the sharing my screen.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for everyone's contribution. So social injustice, youth clear at seeing of the facade and fantasy of the standard story, social injustice. Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. So yes, I mean, all of the research that we had, especially about the Tunisia case, they have linked that youth were easy, I mean, to be lured towards, joining violent extremist groups because they were looking for a bigger narrative, I would say, like a bigger, cause than themselves, as quoted from one of the books that one of the jihadists have written about that. So, because as I mentioned before, a lot of people, they were living in very poor conditions and vulnerable communities, and they were neglected in terms of opportunities. So they ended up having a fragile identity, like they didn't even belong to, feel that they belong to the country as citizens. So I can quote a few, or mention a few examples. So I remember there was a TV report that they have done in one of the very remote areas in Tunisia, where someone, he was like totally out of what's happening in the country. He thought that he's still, living, under a regime that, started in the 19 something like that. And he said one sentence that would summarize everything. He said that, I think what's linking me to Tunisia is only my ID, because I feel like I'm a citizen. I don't believe that I'm enjoying my citizenship rights, or even I can even exert them, or even like influence any sort of policy in the country. And I remember what we did with young leaders, entrepreneurs. We wanted to make this research to be more personal, not something that it's written on reports. So we did a lot of focus groups with youth, and we have listed those, reasons, as we call them, variability factors. So either because of, due to the system failure to meet the expectation, like jobs, healthcare, etc., or due to the fragile identity. And by identity, we mean not only being as a Tunisian, but because I want to mention religious identity, because people in the, or Tunisians, before like the revolution happened, they were oppressed even in terms of religion. As for example, hijab was banned, like the scarf, it was banned. So women cannot, work or study because of that. And even if she wants like to do that, she will be blacklisted and she will be a victim to police brutality. Because the regime, they did that because they wanted to identify more with Europe, not as an Arab Muslim. For them, it was backward. And a lot of people, they weren't educated about being, what a moderate Muslim is. So after the revolution, when all of the groups, I won't name them, so not to offend anyone, but all of the groups, religious groups that they were exiled abroad, with the ex-regime before, they came back to Tunisia and they brought all of their narratives with them. And since it was a bit like of chaos, more than just, freedom, all the frustration, they were out, and everyone wanted to enjoy what it was they have missed before. So we didn't have like, I would say a controlled or a reviewed, religious, scholarly agreed, let's say, regulation. So everyone was like as if they were taking revenge. They wanted to be a better Muslim. And that's how they ended up, not all of them, of course, but majority of them, they ended up, falling for the violent extremist narrative, as they felt they weren't Muslim enough in the ex-regime. And we have other factors. Some people, they joined violent extremist groups because they wanted to have more money. So one of the ex-rappers, like he was rapping and very, very open-minded, about his lifestyle. He joined, ISIS, and even he shared like a video with the, the Tunisian population through social media that he's getting $10,000, dollars as a sound engineer. And when with our association, we even, went further. We did what we call voices mapping. We've seen how, all the violent extremist groups, it was not only a random, way of convincing one another, but it was a system, a process. So they had people, you know, I would say implanted during, like within mosques, even within bars, and they would approach anyone who is like, you know, the profile of person who seems to be depressed, they are alone, they are looking to try, you know, to finding their own identity or with what they can identify. They would approach them, create friendship, and it was really a process of, you know, getting them to fall into the violent extremism, you know, trap. And they had even their own media. They would exchange text through applications, encrypted ones like Telegram. So what I'm trying to say that it was not only a random thing, but it was a process, and they were really good into using that, especially that they took benefit of the voidness or the emptiness that was happening when Tunisia as a country, as a state, as political parties, and even civil society, they were organizing themselves in order to be a fully accomplished, you know, democracy. And sadly, when I was trying to do some sort of statistics about that, you know, like I said, the fancy Tunisia known for tourism and for freedoms and not having any issues at all, like the media portrayed that before due to censorship and all of that, and what the ex-regime they wanted them to have. I mean, we ended up, I mean, on top of the most exporting countries of violent extremists, I mean, terrorists, I would say, to mainly to Syria. And there were like, in back 2015, you know, the UN, they declared that Tunisia exported more than 5,500, you know, fighters in Iraq and Libya and Mali and many, many other countries. So, I mean, I want you like to maybe if you can use the chat box, I think it's easier than using the Padlet to think that why do you think, what do you think, you know, the state or civil society could have done in order to solve this issue? I mean, of course, based on what I have mentioned before.
And we can just add into the chat box the answer to those questions.
Yes, exactly. I was sad reading, you know, your suggestion. So open social and political dialogue, collaborative talk spaces, create a counter narrative, foster a more inclusive environment accounting for everyone's voices, magnify the voice of moderate Muslims, provide opportunity for engagement in all parts of Tunisian society. To have individuals go into different communities and have meetings with people to have them express themselves and their concerns, worries, and fears, then give them projects that they can be part of to help build their communities into self-sustaining ones where everyone has a role and everyone knows each other. Open the dialogue also to nationals who are abroad. Email calm and grounded in principles, and then show how each community is linked to the larger whole. Educate youngsters on the principles of freedom. Give space for more conservative leaders dialoguing and enjoying the company of moderates, so as to show mutual respect. Involve religious leaders in dialogue and active projects with youth social innovators. Find a reference or revered by everybody figure. Provide more self-growth opportunities for youth to open their minds. Give financial support to reduce the temptation to the extremism option. Teach respect for all people. And provide exchange programs opportunities. Promote peacepreneurship. So much. Then the fun part came, which is Unleash Tunisia Venture Bus. So yeah, I mean, I'm proud to say that a lot has been done. I mean, throughout that process, from think tanks doing research, like academic research. For example, the state, they did their own policies by like training more, of course, like throughout bilateral cooperation from other, you know, governments like the UK, the US, etc., to train, you know, like high ranks, you know, in defense and interior ministries by like doing sort of digitalizing their own platforms for responding or to report any sort of extremist groups by having more training on, you know, controlling borders and all of that. As for the civil society, I did actually, you know, outside my own association, we did a project which is creating a platform, and now there are many, about storytelling, like to share the stories of success stories for people who have lived, you know, within those similar conditions of poverty and lack of access to equal opportunities, and yet they have succeeded. They didn't leave their communities and they are given back to their communities. And at some point also we want to introduce mosques and to show that we had many mosques which up to now they still have remains from churches or from other religious, you know, temples in a way, but they weren't like destroyed, but they were, you know, preserved close to the mosque to showcase tolerance. And we did a series of videos where we have invited imams and religious leaders to talk about peace and peace building and identity and modern Islam and all of that, and acceptance of others. But I want to mention like 3 projects that I have implemented within our association, Young Leaders Entrepreneurs. So the thing is, we've seen that a lot of NGOs that have been doing a lot of training in fancy hotels, but the impact of those workshops, it wasn't really sustainable. But I think it has done like quite the opposite. As you take, you know, people who suffer from poverty to fancy 5-star hotels, for them it was shocking. And I think it had a sort of mirror effect as they spend the weekend in a very nice hotel with all the nicer conditions. For them, it made them even question and feel, you know, that they weren't, you know, living in fair conditions. So we told ourselves, okay, no hotels, let's travel and connect the dots. So we started, I mean, this branded bus where we had, you know, participants from each region. Like we announced, you know, rounds of trips through the Unleash Tunisia Venture Bus. We invited entrepreneurs, young successful persons and influencers, and trainers as well. And we would have an itinerary where they travel from a given, let's say, city to another. And during those trips, we went to the furthest place in Tunisia, even closer to the Libyan border, where we have visited villages, and we took students, you know, out on board throughout those trips. And during those, you know, visits or trips, they would, you know, develop business plans inside the bus. They would have training inside the bus, but of course they would spend the night in a nearby hotel. They would also visit, you know, startups, and in order to discover the ecosystem, that there are opportunities, but maybe they didn't hear about them before. And the Enrich Tunisia Venture Pass, we did like benefit 600 students throughout those trips in partnership with many banks and media, magazines, and many startups that we have visited, and even universities who offered free of charge, venues for other separate training. So out of these 600, we did like sort of follow-up even after the trips to see what they have done with their business plans. We linked them also with incubators in order to develop more their projects. And even we organized job fairs inside those regions because we wanted to have a decentralized understanding of entrepreneurship. And I remember, I think for me, what counts in terms of impact, it's not like the figures that we do for our like M&E, but it's more about the stories. I remember many young people that we have visited in those remote areas, as you can see in the picture, they've told us that before they were really, having that fear about what they will be doing with their future, and they were really helpless, and they really hated being Tunisian because for them, Tunisia didn't give them anything. And they felt that voidness. Some of them, they told me, we wanted to join some clandestine immigration, just go to Europe. Some others, they were even thinking about why not violent extremist groups, at least they will give us power and weapons and all of that, and we'll feel more masculine than ever. And when they have met us as young people, who lived, the same conditions as them, but yet we opted to a better future, we opted to make a change, a lot of them, believe me, they have changed their way of thinking, and they started even their local NGO. And this person actually, he got a scholarship and now he's studying in Europe. Those stories for me, they matter more than having, thousands of written figures or reports. And I think, creating the synergy, declining stereotypes even between regions, and even making those people feel the mobility, like when they travel, they see new faces, they know, they get to know new people, and they hear a lot of stories. It really impacted them. What I understood when I was doing that in young leaders, entrepreneurs, that entrepreneurship is not only about creating revenues and creating jobs, but also it's about giving meaning to those people. And when we give meaning, it's about countering the vulnerability factors, like fragility, fragile masculinity, fragile, understanding of Islam or any other religion, fragile understanding of their meaning or their, citizenship. They understood that Tunisia is not here to give you, but it's up to you to give them, to influence change, and to make, create new policies by going to vote, by, for example, addressing those, by starting an NGO or starting an enterprise, because the government, unfortunately, cannot hire everyone. The second project, which I did, is called Peacelab. And I'm so happy for this project because it was really successful, because it actually it portrays the vision that I'm trying to express or to mention to you. It's about that young people should be partners. They are not only beneficiaries that you take them for a coffee break and that's it, because the impact wouldn't be sustainable. They need to be partners, they need to be part of the process, and also they need to be out of that victimization, I would say, image. Like they should to be active and proactive in making the change. And the Peacelab actually idea was that we trained 30 ambassadors from all over Tunisia, and of course we were some sort of selective, like to select people from vulnerable communities. And after they get, TOTs, we give them seed funding, and they sign on a manifesto to create a club inside their communities, or a chapter called Peacelab. And in that year, we had we helped, create 4 peace labs in Tunisia in the most vulnerable communities. And they submit their action plans. So it's up to them to recruit their volunteers, to look for a venue, to create a partnership with the youth house or a youth center, and to implement all of that, action plan which they have submitted. And we would meet quarterly to discuss, where they can share, their success stories, the activities that they have done, lesson learned, and all of that. And as you can see from the picture, those young people, they are not beneficiaries now. They are managers of their own. Actually, from club, they turn it now. We have 6 associations, and they have their total or complete autonomy. They have their own budget and their own board of members. So the vision that I'm trying to say is, which really worked, is not to only have them as beneficiary for 1 or 2 or 3 activities and that's it, but it's really about pushing them to get out of their comfort zone. Like, of course, you support them with resources and training and all of that, like whatever, financial or technical support, but also you empower them in order to create their own vision and their own NGOs or like any kind of frame of support to their communities. And our last project, which we have done during the pandemic, we organized an online hackathon called She Builds Peace. And it was only for women, as we wanted to push women to be part of the peace and women's security and to have a better say about women peace security process in terms of the UN regulation 1325 resolution or any local initiative in their own country. And of course, I'm not ashamed of seeing this, that always we are giving the opportunity for members or participants from vulnerable communities. So 30 have participated, and we did a lot of webinars where we did the team building. And after they have been divided into teams, we gave them a challenge, which is to create a project, or it can be an enterprise or a social project to advance women's voices in creating peace processes. And then we created a landing page where there was an online voting online. And this is actually the picture of one of the winners with her team. So she created an online platform to include LGBTIQI communities in the peace process. And it was actually a very marvelous project. And I remember in that hackathon online, we got then more than 5,000 votes, not only from Tunisia. So we can see that also in that process, we learned as an association about the importance of understanding the power of social media, the power of internet and digital literacy as it speaks a lot, especially to younger generation. So that's it from my side. I hope that I didn't speak a lot. And I hope that you have a lot of questions for me or a feedback or any tips, because I'm here also to learn from you as well. And thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Ahlem. We'll open up the floor for questions, or the forum for questions. If you could just, you can unmute yourself to ask your question, or you can type in the chat if you like. So we'll take any questions. Ahlem will take any questions you may have.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. May I?
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
With regard to the last slide, I noticed that the young woman was wearing a shirt with the She Builds Peace in English on it and holding a booklet with the title She Builds Peace, also in English on it. And the first thing that struck me was, why was it not in 1 or 2 other languages at the same time? I'm puzzled by that.
Ahlem, you're on mute. Maybe we have, oh, there you go. Ahlem, did you hear the, oh.
She's on mute again. Can you unmute her, Teresa?
I've asked her.
Do I need to repeat?
Oh, there we go. There she is.
Oh no, I think she, well, let's see if she got it. Hi, Ahlem, are you there?
We might have to come back if there's a technical difficulty, Ed, on that one.
Okay.
Following on Ed's question, I had the same question about the bus, which also was in English rather than in Arabic and French, which of course Tunisia is a Franco-Arabic society.
Yeah, I do know a lot of their materials and their training presentations, just from working with Ahlem and speaking with her, are done in Arabic or French as well. I'm not sure whether branding was English. I think they had Arabic branding on the bus as well, though, as I recall. So I think most of the, because they do the programming, I'm pretty sure, in a way that because they need to go to the people. Although a lot of Tunisians also study and speak in English as well.
Oh, you're back.
Oh, there she's back.
Did you hear that question,
Yeah,
Ahlem?
I'm back. Yeah, sorry, I just heard about the French thing. So the thing is, but because most of the implementers of that project, they are US exchange program alumni, so we were pretty much into pushing English than French. But the thing is that, yeah, I agree with you, Jason, that most of the curriculum was done in French and Tunisian Arabic, because Tunisian Arabic is quite different than Fusha or the standard Arabic. Yeah, but the branding, because even MIPI, like the donor was an American, from American side, so it was both, you know, in English and Arabic.
Yeah, and you did receive a large a grant to do that project through the U.S. Embassy in Tunis.
Exactly, and even that project was selected actually by the BMW Group and the UN as one of the most 10 innovative projects for the Intercultural Award. Yeah, we submitted an application for that, and it was selected as a model of intercultural innovation.
Great. Other questions or comments?
Looks like we have a hand raised from Charbel.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Charbel.
Hello, can you hear
Hello.
me?
Yes.
So first, I want to thank you, Ahlem, for this amazing presentation and for all the information provided. I apologize, I have arrived 10 minutes late from the actual date of the presentation. And when I just arrived, I don't know if I was mistaken that you actually run a program related to teach professionals and graduates how to job search and land a job. So can you tell us more? Can you tell me more about this program and how is it being implemented? And thank you in advance.
Thank you, Charbel. Thank you a lot. Yeah, so actually it's called the Unleash Tunisia Venture Pass, and it wasn't really for professionals, I would say, like those who had the privilege, you know, to know really how to find a job or maybe a better education, but it was targeting like freshly graduates or, you know, students in their final year about like to graduate. And the rationale behind that project, it was more about the Tunisian reality, that there was a gap between education and the market needs, as we have a huge rate or an increased rate of unemployment, which is one of the factors leading to, to joining violent extremist groups, I would say, and poverty and all of that. And actually, we've done that in based on mobility, not into like venues like hotels or centers, because we wanted to blend in innovation and mobility and allow people to travel. So we have organized this bus venture where we pick students through an application or door-to-door, you know, campaigning, especially if we are targeting remote areas where there is no internet. And we would, you know, get them to travel inside the bus with other coaches and entrepreneurs and successful influencers. And we had a program like training inside the bus, training, you know, inside venues given by university through partnership, or even we had what we call like safari, where they really, you know, visit nearby startups, because a lot of young people, they tend to really blame everything with the government. Like, I'm not saying that the government shouldn't assume the responsibility of providing, you know, respectful standard of life, but also young people, they need to be entrepreneurial. Like, if there is no job from the government, you should find one or create one. And that's what we wanted them to do, is to get to know, and hand opportunities and even ask for it and create, create them as well. Like to discover the ecosystem and, build, or I would say create synergies with incubators, with the banks, with youth career centers. So that was our approach.
Great, thank you. Miriam, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, hi. First, I want to thank you, Ahlem, for addressing the Tunisian issue well. You are so inspiring. I have a question. Did you face any obstacles when you wanted to found your own association? I know that legal paperwork can be a bit complicated, but other than that, thanks.
Thank you so much, Miriam. So, I mean, it was easier, to be honest, after the revolution, like to start an association, like you pretty much write a sort of manifesto where you need like 2 people to sign on that and to be legalized, of course. And then you send it to the prime minister, I would say, or the government. And there is something like, if you don't hear back from them within 15 days, I think, like there is no objection or anything, then it means that your association is legit and you can start working. But to be honest with you, in order to get, like to create a bank account, I would say so many banks, they refused to do that because there was an issue of terrorist financing for many Quranic, I would say, based association, unfortunately, and many other political parties. So they would ask for a lot of proof in order to really create a bank account for you, especially if you are a youth-led organization. And also we had problems with the conspiracy theory if you are getting money from abroad.
Thank you.
Thanks. It looks like we have another question from Jamila in the chat. I'm wondering if the coronavirus pandemic showed any social problems that you might tackle in the future.
Exactly. Thank you so much. I mean, actually, we started a discussion about this. I think as I'm working also in international development organization, so everyone tend to do a lot of online thing. So I think now we are started to talking about other, kind of support, especially if we are targeting, people in vulnerable communities where they don't have even laptops or even how to use it. So I think now we had discussion about inclusion, about is it really inclusive when you have a webinar online? Does it speak to a rural woman or someone who's really depressed and into a state of no more like wanting to be here in Tunisia? So now we are really thinking about how to have digital mediums, but in a way that's inclusive and that's grounded on the reality of things. Because sometimes we have passion, we have a lot of thoughts, but the reality is something else. And speaking of which, about the Unleashed, actually we have been denied to even start the project because of the security issues as we were touring the borders between Algeria and Libya. And we have done a lot, I mean, a lot of efforts in order to really convince the Ministry of Interior to get the permission to do that. So in each time, like if we are visiting a city, we need to submit all the names of the persons and copy of their IDs and the itineraries, and even like to draw to them like a sort of little map where we are. And each time we need to call the person, like focal point of them from the Ministry of Interior to update him. And even we had even problems with the branding, why it's in English. The Americans behind you. But thanks God, we've been through all of that.
I believe, Ira, you had a question?
Yes, thank you very much for that really inspiring presentation and all the wonderful work you've been doing. I work with Legacy on a project of theirs called the Global Transformation Corps. And I'm very interested in to see, have you taken the step with the participants on the bus, and I hear that you did some follow-up with them, and actually linking them with successful entrepreneurs to create sort of like a brother relationship or a sister relationship, so they keep on getting the ongoing mentoring which is necessary for sustaining them in the future and finding ongoing funding for them.
Yes, Thank you so much. So actually, I mean, as I said, like what we were doing as an association wasn't more about, recording the numbers of people, but writing stories, like story highlights about what's happening, because that was part of our vision. And we had many participants who created startups. And one of them actually now he's pretty much successful. Like he participated in the Istanbul pitch fest, something like that. And they get a bigger investment from a European investor, like a business angel. And some others, they started their own NGOs, but also most of them, they are now active in civil society. And I hear a lot of news about them getting scholarship abroad. So I think what happened here, that people, there are a lot of opportunities, and especially speaking about international organization, they give a lot of, I would say, positive discrimination, let's say, like they give opportunities to people from vulnerable communities and they train them. Because they know that they have been oppressed before. So a lot of them, they were, I would say they were blind about that. They didn't have, a fair access to those opportunities. So when they met with a bunch of exchange program students and also other entrepreneurs, okay, now they know where to apply and how to get scholarship themselves. So that's what happened exactly.
And then Makram, thank you. Makram, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I'm a 16-year-old entrepreneurship enthusiast. I feel like I'm the youngest one in here. I have a question for Ahlem. How much time did it take you to reach a global reputation? I mean, everyone knows you, the peacepreneur that was like reached like really widespread. Your reputation has grown, and we know I'm Lebanese. I'm from an Arabic country, so we all know that entrepreneurship is very hard in these countries. How much time did it take you after your association and after having this buzz and the great ideas to reach this global reputation and recognized by every single country all around the globe?
Thank you so much, Makram. Makram, I know, because in Tunisia we say Makram with with E. So the thing is that I think that being authentic about your story. So for me, I think that social media helped me a lot, and also pushing my narrative, I would say, to international, big forums, like with Legacy, for example, within One Young World and other, well reputable, let's say, organization, and taking the chance whenever it's possible to really, apply and participate in those international, platforms. It was like one of the best opportunities to me to speak about my story. I think with the award that I got from the State Department and also other opportunities, like when I participated with One Young World, I will type it here. It was with The Hague. Where I have shared, the panel with the stars like Akon, Rosario Dawson, Hollywood. She was like my counselor. I think it was really a great push to me, as I was selected out of 2,800 participants to share my story about my hometown. Even I shared about one of my visits to my hometown, like a group of violent extremist groups or terrorists. They have, kidnapped people there. And I was there actually when it happened. And I saw how, military, they were like surrounding, that house and all. And I saw even how people weren't afraid to chant the Tunisian anthem, and they wanted to support. And I was the only person there to share all of that through Twitter and international media. They started, reaching out to me. So I think, like as a summary, social media, like especially LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter, is really great, to build your image as a person, and also, seizing the opportunity to apply for high profile events and platforms would really help, to make people, learn about your story.
I think she was also, as she said, you have a background in media and marketing. So I know that probably helped in telling your story there.
Exactly,
then,
yeah.
Yeah. Rashida, you had typed a question in the chat that you were really inspired and wondering if there would be any upcoming opportunities and what motivates you to despite the hard times you may face? What motivates you to keep moving forward?
Exactly. So one of the decision, maybe this is the moment to announce this even to you, is that I'm leaving my position now with my current job, and I'm pursuing a master's degree in security and diplomacy at London University through a UK scholarship. I feel that it's like a lot of people, they say, okay, you are 29 and you have a master's degree and a really good job, I mean, a career, why you are leaving all of this and wanting another opportunity? Because I tell them that whenever I'm sharing, statistics or things about security, I feel, a little bit guilty because I'm not a specialist from an academic, background. So that's why I wanted to have this decision, to take the risk in order to start it over. So what motivates me, I think it's my story, because I feel that in my community, I was the only person who got a scholarship, and now I can see dozens of them, which is really good. And I think, inspiring others to really think how they can change, the narrative and how they can force their own story and being heard, despite all the regional discrimination and lack of, I would say, equality of opportunities between cities in Tunisia. I think that's what really makes me do what I'm doing.
Great, thank you. I would like to, oh wait, we have one more question in the chat, and then I think we're gonna go to some closing remarks from Ahlem and Mr. Rash. So Gina asked, in what ways who we are, I wonder in what ways we who are her and can support your work materially, perhaps by putting you in communication with entities we might have relationships with. So Gina, are you just asking how we can support Ahlem in moving forward her work? I think that was the chat, yes. So how can people support you in moving forward all this great work that you've started?
I think, Gina already answered. I think connection with the international organization that would support, because honestly, as a youth-led organization, we are really struggling with ensuring that we have enough funds the whole time, like grants. So I think even connection, technical support also is needed, and also mostly financial support like grants or any other funding opportunities.
Great.
Jason,
Thank
can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. That was clear. Mr. Rash, do you have some closing thoughts?
Well, I wouldn't be me if I didn't, would I be? Ahlem, Jazakallah khair. What a wonderful
Shukran.
presentation.
Thank you so
Afwan, my
much.
dear, we are here to help you and others like you, as I said, but it's important that people, I think, understand just a few things. One is not to generalize regions of the world, because everybody's history and background is somewhat different. So one thing that we specialize in at Legacy International is to understand what's happening in each country, and that's why we have partnerships in every country that we work in. The things that you face may, in general, be faced by others, for example, in the Maghreb, or even in the Gulf or other places, but it's so, you have pointed out so beautifully how unique the situation is for you in Tunisia. The interfaces with the government, the interfaces with NGOs, the interfaces with funding organizations. That's, of course, what we try to specialize in at Legacy International in all of our trainings. To be clear that every individual is indeed an individual and unique, and every country is unique. What stimulated some thoughts in me by your presentation was that I wanted to discuss with you in another situation how we can interface and collaborate, but also to talk to you a little about coaching. And one of the things that we're focusing on in terms of really focused coaching for people, and also the inclusion of mental health experts who are used to social issues and social problems, which is another thing that I'm focusing on with GTC. So these are three things that I think will bear some more discussion and some collaboration. And I thank you very much for the opportunity to hear you today and to share with you again. And after 4 years to see you again, my God, the time really flew. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Ahlem. I want to end with a quote. Again, I want to go back to Mahatma Gandhi because he so much influenced my life and the work that started Legacy. That I started Legacy over 40 years ago. I had quoted to you Dr. King quoting Gandhi at the beginning in my introduction. But I think that something else that Mahatma Gandhi said, which was, and of course, these are inspiring statements, but then we have to be realistic and look at the world. What's happening in India today, for example? What's happening in the United States today? So we can quote and we can quote and we can quote, and I do that to inspire myself and others, but we have to act, we have to act, we have to act. And your email shows you put the word activist, and that's so important. Gandhi said, I have not the shadow of a doubt that any man or woman can achieve what I have if he or she would make the same effort and cultivate the same hope and faith. So there we have it. The recognition of what somebody has accomplished in their own self, but then the projection of that and saying, well, it takes this kind of effort and two things that are not so easy to learn in a textbook or an academic study, hope and faith. And that we get through our values and our interface with one another. And that's what we're trying to accomplish here at our Global Viewpoints Forum, what we try to do every single day, and everything from our school on our campus here to Legacy International's global work. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Ahlem, for being who you are and doing what you do. And we're here to serve all of you.
Thank you, Mr. Ash. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So great to see you today. We would like to invite you to our continuing Global Viewpoints forums that will be continuing twice a month on the 2nd and 4th Wednesdays. So we're switching from Thursdays to Wednesdays, moving forward into September and October. September's theme will be around environmental sustainability. We have two great speakers coming up. One is an alumni of our Professional Fellows Program who really had to pivot his environmentally advocacy organization due to COVID in Egypt, and it will be offering some tips on how we can make our organizations, our business, our work, and support sustainability virtually during this time. And Bernie, and he'll be speaking on September 9th at 12 noon. And then our second speaker, Bernie could introduce, which will be on the 23rd.
Yep, sure. So that's also going to be on climate change, and that's going to be by Harriet Sugarman, who is the CEO of a company she founded called Climate Mama, which teaches parents how to talk to their kids about climate change. But she also has a lot of really great ideas on how each of us as individuals, adults, you know, or youth can get involved and make a change for the climate.
Great, thank you. And then one more piece of business, we'd like to take a photo. Teresa can help us organize that. If you would like to be in the photo, you can turn your screen on.
Yep, so I'm gonna take a screenshot of everyone. If you wanna be in the photo, go ahead and turn on your camera. I'll give you all a couple seconds to do that. And then I'll go ahead and give you all a countdown. So give us a smile, thumbs up, whatever, on 3. Okay, 1, let me move the chat, sorry. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Beautiful, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We're gonna go ahead and stop the recording. We'll leave the room open for a little bit longer. Folks would like to have some side conversations or follow up.